All right, guys. Well, yeah, I'm great to be talking with Paul Jr. and Bart, and this Jonestown thing. I mean, it happened when I was a sophomore in high school. It was gigantic news, the Jonestown Massacre. That's conflicting reports, but somewhere 918, maybe closer to 1,000 people ended up dead, and that's men, women, and children. And it was just a horrific. I never forget it. Watching the news and seeing the helicopter flying over top, and with all the bodies. But the thing is, this guy was from Indiana. The thing is, how in the world does an individual have the ability to take over 1,000 people's mind control, spirit control, to the point they sell their homes and everything? Now, a lot of those people were desperate, okay? They were really from real poor locations and what have you, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But the question is, how do you convince almost 1,000 people to die and drink the Kool-Aid? And this is an incredible, it's more than mind control. It had to be spirit control as well. And so we can talk about that, but it's just incredible to me.
Yeah, this is so the continuation of our cult classic series. This one, a lot of people have been asking about for us to cover with Jonestown and Jim Jones. I mean, doing some of the research for it, a lot of the stuff that you'll see, documentaries that they've done, podcasts that they do, they usually just focus on, the ending of it, really. But there's kind of like a lot that we've covered with Heaven's Gate and then the Manson family as well. The childhood and the upbringing and the way that these cult leaders were raised really has a lot to do with, their oratory style and, kind of their ulterior motives, leading these people essentially off a cliff.
Really?
And Jonestown is similar in the fact that it ended in a mass suicide, which now it's probably more of a mass murder event, really, is what it kind of came down to. But it's similar to Heaven's Gate in the fact that, Heaven's Gate was, what was it, 39, 40 people at
39.
the end?
Yeah, 39.
So it's similar in that instance, but this is a way larger scale, same sort of style of taking people's financials, moving them all the way to South Africa, and taking their passports and pretty much having everybody rely completely on the Reverend Jim Jones. So this one was I believe the largest death toll before 9/11 for Americans all in one instance.
Wow.
Yeah. So Bart put together a documentary for us on this, and we can start with some of that to kind of help lead us through here. So
is this documentary also on your BC Begley channel, Bart?
Yeah, it's on my YouTube channel.
James Warren Jim Jones was born on May 31st, 1931, in Crete, Indiana, to Lynetta and James Thurman Jones, a disabled World War I veteran. His upbringing was modest, marked by economic hardship and emotional neglect. He described strong spiritual inclinations from a young age, and he was known to practice sermons on neighborhood children and was deeply drawn to Pentecostalism. His early church involvement included working as the hospital orderly and marrying a nursing student, Marceline Baldwin, in 1949. Their interracial, quote, rainbow family, through adoption, would later embody Jones's commitment to racial integration. In 1952, Jones became a student pastor at the Somerset Methodist Church. He gained attention for his charismatic oratory, faith healing, and progressive stance on integration. Conflicts with church leadership eventually led to his departure. The strong influence of Black preacher Father Divine shaped his ministry style, integrated worship, spiritual theatrics, and communal living all part of his evolving theological and social vision. In 1955, Jones founded his own congregation, originally called Wings of Deliverance, and later renamed the People's Temple Full Gospel Church. He attracted followers with his fiery sermons, healing rituals, some staged, and radical social activism. The temple distinguished itself through its racial integration at the time when segregation was still prevalent. It also engaged in activist-style philanthropy, aid to the poor, soup kitchens, and support for the elderly and the mentally ill. In 1960, the temple aligned with the Disciples of Christ, offering Jones both legitimacy and autonomy. He was ordained in the year 1964. Under Jones, the congregation gained political and civic attention. He served on the Indianapolis Human Rights Commission, desegregating public venues. However, this activism also raised local tensions and hostility towards him and his new, quote, rainbow family. And by the mid 1960s, scrutiny of his methods, particularly the healings, prompted Jones to consider relocating to a more receptive environment.
So let me pop that off there, because again, Bart puts together a nice, quick documentary for everybody. Instead of watching the 3-hour whatever on Hulu, which is very good, by the way, the new one that just came out. But there's again, the front load of this is there's a lot to digest about Jim Jones. So he grew up in Crete, Indiana. I think they ended up moving his family to Lynn, which was in Washington Township. We used to play them in basketball, actually. His father was a World War I veteran, alcoholic, kind of just struggling, probably with, undiagnosed PTSD, which they didn't even know was a thing then.
And he was disabled.
Yeah, disabled, World War I veteran. He's got mental health issues. His mother was poor. She kind of had to go out and kind of work for the family to actually support them. So not a lot of direction for him as a child growing up. Not a lot of funds. He kind of found refuge in all of the churches within the area, which is the point really for a lot of the, disadvantaged or the poor. Open doors for them to come in, feed them, offer guidance and leadership. Great thing. Some of Jones's influences were not only with that, but then also, he was well read. He read a lot of Hitler, Lenin, all of these socialist ideas as well, which I find that interesting that Hitler was an influence for him, because really, honestly, the good work that he did with the ministry was totally opposite of that. I think with the influence of Hitler was more of the crowd captivation, the oratory style.
Yeah, because he was all about desegregation. It seemed like he had a lot of leftist views blended in with his religion, which, there's a borderline you gotta walk there, because
it's contradictory.
The ends justify the means almost, in a way. So he's convincing everybody that he must not be wrong, because if you look at his moral compass and his social activism, right, he's got to be right, because he's on the right side of history, according to his mind, through his social activism and his desegregation and integration and stuff like that. So in his mind, how could he be wrong if he's so morally justified? You know what I mean? I can see how that as a foundation early on, when you start to go off a cliff and drink the Kool-Aid, you don't think, hey, I could be wrong about this, because he's so blinded by morally, he thinks he's correct, to do this.
That's a good point, Bart. And there's something else here. You said he read Hitler's writings and who else's?
Lenin. I can't remember the whole list of. Okay.
Mostly leaders, charismatic, very powerful influencers. Okay. And they can influence large crowds. And Hitler was probably in my opinion, the first real powerful orator who could stand in front of tens of thousands. He used the power of the PA system with the big speakers and could speak, and did it at night. So the lights, and it kind of magnified him and his ability. And I think Jim Jones, I'm just saying, it appears to me, besides his upbringing in a Pentecostalism settings, which he heard probably great oratorial preachers in that area who could
Right.
really bring a sermon. So he was captivated by that. But then he was also captivated by being able to persuade large. How could he turn this into a larger crowd that could be persuaded? And I think he was, whether he subconsciously was doing it or not, he was studying people who had this incredible ability,
Right.
whether good or bad. Am I right on that part?
Yeah, because it looked like that black preacher, I forgot his name, really influenced him, and it seemed to me like
Father Divine.
it's Father Divine, and it seemed like the Midwest black church influenced him a lot. The way the preachers were more charismatic, than what the white churchgoers of the time. I mean, this is 50s.
Yeah,
it seemed like that captivated him, and he was like, "Wow," because they get real charismatic. They get into it. It draws you into their sermon, and I think he thought, I could be the first white guy to preach like this and to really shake up.
Yeah, a white guy preaching like a black guy.
A white guy, right? So it's kind of like an Elvis thing. It's kind of like black music is popular. I'll take it and do it and try to make a white guy do it. And then like he did the same thing with his preaching style, and some of the studying of leftist ideology influenced, I think, his religion. I think if you was to sit down and ask Jim Jones if Jesus was a leftist, he would have said, yeah. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that it seemed like he blended political activism, social activism, with religion. Versus most of the time, political activism and social activism isn't really connected to a religion. It's more a Mussolini or a Hitler, but he infused leftist ideology with Christianity. Like I said, if you was to interview him and ask him, he'd probably tell you Jesus and all the disciples were progressives.
Yeah,
that's the way he viewed it.
Yeah. And he was also willing to go and integrate racially the black in with the white in the mixed congregations, which in the 50s and 60s was a big deal. I mean, that's
this is before civil rights. This is still different bathrooms, different drinking fountains. This is segregation, you know. So he's trying to desegregate before federal law was even caught up with it. So he's ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I think what everything you're pointing out, Bart, I think that was his whole thing. I mean, from some of the influences he had, I mean, he had a lot of charismatic preachers that he ran in circles with. I have to look them back up again, but there were faith healers, Pentecostal preachers, and then some of the readings that he was doing. Father Divine, right? So that again, with the sort of civil rights, even prior to civil rights movement, was Father Divine. Some of his readings that we were talking about, he studied Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Karl Marx, and Gandhi as well. So some good, philosophies in there, and then there's different political doctrines with Marx, Stalin, and then oratory style with Hitler, like we've talked about numerous times. But then he's also trying to, like I mentioned previously, he's trying to find comfort in his lack of direction in childhood as well. So he's going to the churches for this. So he's getting influenced, religiously, spiritually by different churches, and he bounced around. He pretty much was going to church almost every day.
Yeah.
Any church that he could find, which, you probably want to go to the one that is most interesting to you, especially as a child trying to find your way. But the other weird thing, I don't know if it's weird, but it's the childhood thing that he would use is the children his age. He would have them come in and pretty much practice preacher and then try to do different sort of crowd control techniques on them, which was kind of strange. But if you're studying all that, I kind of get it why he was doing that stuff.
In my view, his dad is a disabled World War II veteran who's super old at this time. He, when he's a kid, his dad, World War II is in 1916. So his dad is super old. Okay. And
Yeah.
he's a disabled veteran. And his mom is not only caring for the house, but she's caring for his old man. So the lack of attention at the house, he found that when he could make a mini sermon at recess and get all the kids' attention. So the attention that he was missing at home, he was getting through fake church at recess through all the kids. And he built a little a reputation for himself there. So I think that had something to do with it, the lack of attention at home and the attention that he was getting on his fake church.
Sure. I mean, I think it also goes back to the being able to control something, right? There's a lot of no direction for a child. They kind of want direction. So the ability to be able to control something is really powerful for you, or to be able to own something yourself. So I think a lot of that played into, what eventually led to Jonestown.
I think he also admired, he had some leadership qualities, to be honest. Right. He had talent. He was talented at speaking and persuading. He was, he had leadership ability because he could, even as a child, he could gather kids in the neighborhood together and all of a sudden preach sermons to them as a kid. So some of this was naturally gifted.
Sure.
The problem is with people that are gifted in the ability to speak and to persuade is that is a gift. It's a gift from God, like a musician. Okay. Like a kid prodigy. Okay. Or a scientific mind. It's what you do with it. And in Jim's case, he wanted to be successful. It appears. And he had a good, in his heart, he was trying to integrate black and white together. He was trying to help the disadvantaged, and help the poor. He wanted to be on certain committees. He also admired Pentecostalism and some of the great orators that he had seen and heard about, and he wanted to be a leader. So he had a lot of potential. The problem is he starts to go off the rail and beginning to take on a Messiah complex. I'm not sure when that hit him. If he was still in Indiana, was he in Indianapolis? Because you said he had moved around.
Right.
At some point, I sense that a good guy started losing control of himself. It started getting to his head, if you will, and he began to think he was special. And this happens even today in preachers and just, first of all, I'm going to say this. There are great motivational speakers. There's some great ones who should be preachers, but went a different direction, and they're over there. They're great at persuading, incredible motivators, which I think they would be awesome as preachers. And there's preachers that probably should just be motivational speakers. Okay. And there's some we just don't need at all. But at the end of the day, I think Jim Jones got the Messiah complex. Thought, I'm special. Maybe God's really got his hand on me. I think I can take this to another level. And he starts getting criticism. If I'm right, Bart, you would know better. Somewhere.
Well, he moves because the lack of acceptance for open integration in the Midwest at the time.
That's true.
disillusioned him. So he wants to go to California. I think, is it right? Drew?
Yeah.
He goes to California, and you know, he sees it as more of a progressive place where they will accept his ideology, and maybe perhaps he could grow his church.
Right.
So I think that, and two things happen. I think the local people of Indianapolis, Indiana at the time in the 50s, late 50s, early 60s, didn't accept his radical, leftist, progressive desegregation church idea. So he wanted to go to the West Coast where they would accept it. And then when he got there, he starts to get the attention of newspapers and the press. And I think, and some of it is positive, but some of it isn't. So I think that that's where the defensive walls start to go up. Not everybody's accepting my ideology. It's not just racist bigots in the Midwest. It's also progressive media personalities out West. This is where he starts to come up with the idea that maybe we need to go to a secluded commune like Jonestown, where we be left alone. And then also the book of Revelation starts to come into play here, because he starts to, like you said, the Messiah complex. He thinks he's going to be the main character in this end of the world event.
Yep.
You know, so that starts to really play on his mind too, as we need a commune to get away from the Cold War. That's going to end the world. And, you know,
so he goes, and you're right, he goes into this apocalyptic theology where he sees that, the world must be coming to an end. And these people don't get it. He had like 1,000 people in his church in Los Angeles. I believe he was in Los Angeles. I can't
San
remember.
Francisco, where everything was going on anyway.
Yeah. So he went to a real progressive liberal city. And he went to the poor. He went to the disadvantaged. He took on not only the black parishioners, but he took on the gay parishioners. And that was another culture that was trying to establish itself in the late 60s, early 70s. So he embraced all of these factions. And so to do that, he had to change his theology too. From what he was preaching back in Indiana, he had to change that to make a bigger tent. But he still had, as Bart said, he still had that Midwestern style, that Pentecostal style and flair, which the inner city people really liked. They kind of liked that. But the newspapers he started getting not only praise, but he started getting persecution. And he didn't like that. And he felt that, and a lot like David Koresh, he felt like, hey, I'm special. It's the end of time. I might be one of the two witnesses or something. You know, God must be using me to help pull this thing at the end. And he came into this apocalyptic thinking. Now I can bring that up because being an eschatology teacher and preach on the end times, you know, obviously you have to be very careful. You don't just start setting dates and say, hey, I think the world's going to end right here. I'm way more realistic than that. God's in no hurry. He don't care about my lifetime. It don't matter. Okay. He could be so I know this freaks people out every time I say that, but God's in no hurry. His prophecies will be fulfilled. It don't have to be in your small lifetime. When God's ever, he's forever. Okay. He's beginning and the end. He's not rushing things because Paul Begley's 63 and he's getting older and it must be the end times. And we missed the Mayan calendar. So, but guys do. What happened is these people like David Koresh, guys like Applegate, and again, Jim Jones, they all think they're the ones that have to help bring humanity into the next, the next dispensation of time, age. And if you believe that and believe that you are part of that, you're making that happen. That's where you've gone beyond the Messiah complex now. Where you're special. You actually think you might be the Messiah or something. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. I don't remember who came up with this idea, but I read it somewhere. But basically, there's a psychological idea that especially back then before the internet, but even more so now, when you read a book, you know, there's a character, there's a plot, there's side characters. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you're growing up in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 1800s. When you read a book, there's a main character, there's side characters. When you watch a television show or a movie, there's main characters, there's side characters. And if a human, if this is what you're ingesting your whole life, you're reading a book about Peter Pan, Peter Pan's the character. You're reading a book about the Bible, Jesus is the character. You're watching a movie about John Wayne and he's the character. You start to come up with this concept like you're a character in your own movie, in
Right.
you see what I mean?
Yep.
I don't remember what that's called or who came up with that concept, but it's not reality based. It's like a fantasy world. It's
You're believing the whole world evolves around you.
Yeah. Because everything you've ingested has had main characters and plots and things built around this story for one, you know, and now you think that must be how it reflects in your life. This is, you know, and I think that doesn't help anybody at all, especially when you're already got a little loose screws, you know.
Yeah.
And get this. And when I said that sometimes preachers, they are very influential people. They are one step from man and divine in the eyes of people, not in reality.
Right.
Reality, we're nothing. We're just human beings with God. Maybe God's asked us to do a certain job. But people will see their pastor or spiritual influencer as something one step from divine.
Mm-hmm.
When that happens, if the person, the preacher or the priest or whoever he is, if he believes that, he gets in danger of being drawn in to this Messiah complex or this influential. And then this is why you see mega pastors and different people fall in disgraceful situations, because they then start justifying what they're doing. It's okay because I'm special. Politicians do the same thing. Actually, they're the worst. They're worse than the preachers. And I'm going to tell you why. Because they have really no guardrails. The preacher, the priest, he's got guardrails. He knows God is saying, hold it a minute. He feels that guardrail all the time. He's got to keep it in between the lines. Okay. The politician has no guardrail. They'll chase anything that moves. They have no moral compass. They don't care. They'll say this today, they're that tomorrow, they're this today. And they are really, this is why you'll see some of these politicians really take on, and they're very powerful, very influential, huge numbers of people follow them, way more than any mega pastor. I mean, we're talking multi-millions. And if they don't keep themselves in check, they become, in their mind, almost as big as God, almost as big as Christ. And so this is a human flaw. I'm not a psychologist, so I cannot explain what that is. I guarantee you it's a human flaw among some people that get in an influential situation and then they crash. This is why a lot of your actors end up overdosing and crashing and burning. You see this all the time because they are put on a pedestal so high that they don't know what in the world to do with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so so I think Jim Jones fell into this at some point. He drank his own Kool-Aid before he served it. That he believed he was special. He was something else. He was beyond most people. He felt he was on a divine mission, and the guardrails fell off. I mean, we continue watching this. I think Bart's documentary is great.
1965, Jim Jones relocated to Northern California, specifically Redwood Valley, attracted by its isolation and perceived disaster safety. Around 65 families followed him there. He planted the seeds of his vision: communal living, collectivized resources, and apocalyptic preparation. In the late 1960s and into the early 1970s, saw a rapid expansion into San Francisco and Los Angeles. The temple became a fixture in Bay Area politics and society. Its social programs, homes for vulnerable populations, addiction help, and activism garnered praise from political figures and the media alike. Jones's political alignment grew more overt. He dubbed his philosophy apostolic socialism, a blend of Marxism and Christianity. He severed ties with traditional religion and began claiming personal divinity. By the early 1970s, Jones had become increasingly authoritarian. He demanded financial and emotional loyalty from his followers and controlled their personal lives, relationships, child rearing, and finances were all policied. His apocalyptic rhetoric escalated. Nuclear annihilation was imminent, he said, and only communal living could save his adherents. In 1974, Jones claimed to have leased land in Guyana to build a utopian colony free from American oppression. Jonestown was envisioned as a socialist sanctuary, and around 1977, following investigative reports and accusations of abuse in the United States, he relocated about 1,000 of his followers to this remote jungle commune. Life in Jonestown quickly soured. Poor conditions, insufficient food, and oppressive surveillance. Followers were subjected to armed guard patrols, draconian rules, and loyalty, quote, white knights, mock suicide drills to ensure obedience. By 1970,
So yeah, I'm going to pause it there because, now that your documentary has progressed us, right? So we kind of talked about his early childhood and Indiana roots. And then I think one of the things I wanted to mention when you guys were talking there before we went back to the video, part of the reason that they moved from Indiana to, LA, San Francisco, not only was because of the press, I also think that Jones, now this is hard to actually, make factual because he's no longer here. I also think that he started to get a lot more paranoid because, he's running in these circles. I feel like he always had this paranoia from the FBI and possibly CIA kind of watching what he's doing anyway. So the way that he projects that to the congregation is, hey, we're in a location of potential nuclear attack. So we need to go to a new place, right? So to get away from, being subjected to, Cold War nuclear attacks. So let's move here. This move, I mean, I don't even know if he knew his playbook of what he was doing anyway. But the move to San Francisco was very strategic because, yeah, now you can recruit new members to the church. You have progressive values in the universities there, so you can start to recruit professors and young college students and grow the congregation. And then, as we're seeing here, now we make this move again to a remote location in Guyana. And you're starting to, I think all of these seeds were already started to be planted for isolationism and starting to have the congregation rely on Jones as the sole provider / father. He even took on the role from his influence of Father Divine to start having people call him, I forgot what the quote was, but going to his Messiah complex, he started projecting himself and let his congregation know, like, I'll be whatever you want me to be. If you want me to be your friend, I'll be your friend. If you want me to be your pastor, I'll be your pastor. If you don't have a father and you need a father, I'll be your father. If you want me to be your God, I'll be your God. So he's already taken on, that's paraphrasing, but essentially that's what he was saying.
yeah,
So he's already taken this on, and then then they made this big, huge jump, this move to Guyana. And the first thing that he does for all of his followers is he takes all their passports. So you've already given up. They've already, given a lot of their financial support, sold their homes. and then they put all of that into the ministry, which, you know, that's probably all in Jones's hands anyway. And now he's the gatekeeper for who comes and goes.
Yep. And control. You can't leave without a passport.
Right.
You have no outside, and really he isolated them to where it didn't have any outside communication hardly. And you were threatened. There were guards, armed guards. You were stuck. Now you're in this jungle with 105-degree heat, no air conditioning, working in these fields to try to. It's a communal living, and Jones has created this apocalyptic scenario that this is the end of time, and this is the followers are going to go to heaven with him, and they're that the world is about ready to blow up, and he's convinced them. But even when they see the light, how are they going to get out of there? Okay,
right.
You say you've been there 2 months, and you're like, this ain't working, dude. This guy's nuts. And then you start hearing the immoral things he's doing. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you start like, I got to get out of here. How are you getting out of here? This was a trapped, captured group of people who were in need of help. And and that's why the Congressman, Leo Ryan, that's why he actually goes there to find out what in the world's going on here.
Right. And I'll jump back into this, but you mentioned right before I paused that they started to do quote unquote white nights, which was another like a pledge of allegiance essentially to Jones.
Yes.
Where they would do mock suicide drills.
Yes.
So they would, mix the Flavor Aid or Kool-Aid or whatever they were using, and he would let them know like, hey, this isn't a drill, and we're all going to drink this, and we're all going to make revolutionary suicide.
Yeah, he's preaching that doctrine now. He starts preaching the doctrine of suicide into eternity. Now he's entered into Applewhite's world,
right?
Who preached the same thing. And even David Koresh, and we haven't done him yet, okay, but we'll find out later that Koresh preaches the same thing. It's the world against us. We're down to us, and that whole thing, and before the attack on the compound. So we're seeing the same concept again. Matter of fact, Hitler did the same thing. In the end, when he seen Berlin was going to fall, I mean, he did not quit till the bombs were outside. He's down in his bunker when he's finally thinking, okay, and I don't believe he died down there. I actually believe he did escape and made his way to Argentina. But whether he did or not, he waited till the 11th hour. He didn't care to allow the people to die all around him. It's an insane thought, but suicide, mass suicide doctrine is the strangest thing and most scariest thing. And what's worse is some of them believed it.
Another thing, it seemed to me like a holistic socialism. So he's appealing to the progressives, right? Integration, a holistic socialism, and communal living. So when he pitches this idea, a lot of these people are for it because communal living is like their little fantasy, right? So they're like, oh, okay, this is a good idea. So a couple of things that I've noticed between the cult series that we've done here with Charles Manson and Applewhite is the idea that we're gonna all live together in a commune.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's us again, like Pastor
us against
the world. All right. We're all gonna live together in this commune. And then another reoccurring theme I see is this is once again a bad idea. When you're out there,
you think? I think it's a real bad idea.
When you're out there and Jim says we're going to start doing mock suicides is when Bart finds new commune.
You know what I mean? Like a different commune.
It's no longer fun for Bart.
It's
I enjoy great Kool-Aid as anybody else, but I don't want to mock suicide great Kool-Aid because I'll probably never drink great Kool-Aid again. And the next time I'm in my kitchen and I go to drink great Kool-Aid, all I can think about is how Jim used this to revolutionize suicide, and this would ruin Kool-Aid for me. and it's a bad idea. You have
Do
to
you think, Bart, that in his case and in the case of Applewhite and others, this commune ideal got them drawn in, but when they start talking about drinking the Kool-Aid, the suicidal thing, doesn't a light go off somewhere in somebody's head?
That's what I'm saying. This is a bad idea, guys. Jim may have lost it. Somebody should have started questioning, and I think a couple people did. But I mean, like, a lot of people can't convince themselves that they've been hoodwinked, that they've been wrong.
They don't want to.
They don't
Right.
want to admit, humble themselves. Oh man, I've been tricked. I've sold my house, my car. I'm out here in the middle of Guyana. There's not a phone, I missed the Cubs. Like they can't watch baseball. Like Jim's out there doing mock suicides, and we call it white nights.
I thought this was a Christian church, and I thought we were all in this together.
Right.
Well, I mean, there's the reoccurring theme that I see here is this: let's all live in a commune. And the Cold War must have really been on people's minds back at the time, because a lot of the music mentions it, a lot of the books mention it, television shows. And then these people in real life really thought that at any moment nukes are just going to start flying. And in Manson's case, he was going to be, there's going to be a race war, and his people would live through it. In Jim's case, they would be the Christians that lived through this, that would be able to go out and witness to the world and get everybody saved. It's this Messiah complex. It's this I'm special.
Yep. I'm
going to be like, my name is going to be written down like Alexander the Great one day.
Right.
Because I'm so special. I'm chosen, I'm divine, eye of providence,
Yep. That definitely was on Jim Jones. I guarantee he thought that way. I guarantee it.
Public and governmental skepticism prompted California Congressman Leo Ryan and journalists to travel to Jonestown to investigate claims of mistreatment and forced confinement. Several members requested exit and boarded the departing plane. On November 18, 1978, as Ryan's delegation prepared for departure, Jonestown gunmen ambushed them at the airstrip. Ryan and 4 others, including journalists, were killed. Others were wounded. That same day, Jones orchestrated a mass suicide. He convinced or forced his followers to drink a grape-flavored beverage that was laced with cyanide, tranquilizers, and sedatives. Though popularly referred to as Kool-Aid, evidence suggests it was actually Flavor Aid. Armed guards forced children to drink first, followed by adults under uniformed command. Approximately 918 individuals died that day, including deadly injections of children and infants. Jones himself died of a gunshot wound, likely self-inflicted to avoid capture. Under 100 temple members managed to flee or were absent during the attack. Survivors have since recounted harrowing experiences: coercion, psychological manipulation, deception, and forced compliance. The tragedy prompted widespread media focus, and the phrase "drinking the Kool-Aid" became a grim cultural euphemism for blind compliance. Jonestown remains a pivotal case in understanding destructive cult dynamics, and it illustrates how charismatic leaders manipulate ideology, isolation, fear, and control to catastrophic effect. Studies in psychology and religious movements frequently analyze the People's Temple to understand groupthink and brainwashing. A memorial now stands at Evergreen Cemetery in Oakland, California, honoring the hundreds of Jonestown victims. The site is a place of quiet remembrance, and numerous documentaries, books, scholarly articles, and podcasts explore Jonestown's origins, its rise, its collapse, and the haunting legacy. The tragedy continues to prompt reflection on authority, loyalty, racial justice, and mental health. Jim Jones began his journey as a passionate minister, advocating racial integration and social justice. He leveraged genuine goodwill to attract followers and amassed considerable political influence. However, his increasing obsession with power, his professed divinity, apocalyptic fears, and extreme authoritarian control gradually transformed a movement rooted in equality into an oppressive, closed commune. Tragedy then unfolded in Jonestown. What began as a vision of utopia turned into one of the most horrific mass deaths in modern history, claiming over 900 lives, including young children, under the guise of revolutionary suicide. Jones himself died by a gunshot wound amid the collapse of the community that he controlled.
Great documentary, by the way, Bart. I just want to let everybody know. So Pastor had to step out, had to take care of some things this morning while we're recording. But there's, this progression is kind of like you guys were mentioning before. We keep seeing this pattern of, using fear, a good speaker, maybe people that are looking for direction or some sense of purpose that follow this speaker, and maybe some of the things he's saying make sense, right? I think a lot of what Jones was preaching early on kind of made some sense, especially with the racial integration. A lot of the people were looking for a leader after Martin Luther King's assassination, and Jones actually, strangely, kind of took on that role for a lot of people that were following MLKJ. So I think early on there were actually a lot of good things because he was involved in the community. The political leaders in Indiana and San Francisco actually put him on advisory boards. They did a lot of good work in the community with soup kitchens and, kind of helping the poor and the underserved communities find their way and get a footing. But what Jones ended up doing was taking advantage of all of that. I mean, I don't know, like it's hard to figure out what all his philosophy was and his psychology at the time, but it ends up in this. It ends up in people pledging allegiance, him developing a messiah complex. I feel like at some point he was like, I can pretty much say anything and people will follow me. You take
I think that, like Manson and Applewhite, I think Jones also was kind of creating it. He's making it all up as it goes.
right.
So I think that at first you're right. He's helping everybody out. He's doing the right thing. And I don't know what it is or when it was, but something and somewhere he got paranoid over, I would say, the apocalyptic end of the world scenario. And he's reading the book of, he's probably studied Revelation front and back. That's
Right.
got him paranoid. And then the news and everything around him, the assassination of John F. Kennedy, MLK Jr., and the Cold War. And I think apocalyptic paranoia and fears starts
Right.
to play on his mind. And he's already mixing politics and religion are super heavy anyway. And he's probably an expert at revelation. And I don't know when or where the event was that made him go to the dark side, so to speak, here. But I
Right.
think it was something involved in that. And this apocalyptic, the world's about to end, revelations coming true. I can see it everywhere. I open up my eyes. I think that starts to mess with him psychologically. And then I think that the communal living aspect of it is part of his leftist ideology, and he wants a place to where it's church 24/7. It's not just go to church on Sunday, maybe on Wednesdays. It's even when he was a kid, he was doing church every day and then going to church on Sunday. So it's
Right.
live with your congregation, farm, eat, sleep, drink, sweat, pray. Everybody's involved in church 24/7. The People's Temple, that sign, there is no temple, okay, in the People's Temple. What he means is every house, every garden, every building that's in this Jonestown is the People's Temple. The commune is the temple, right? That's what he's that's his ideology. So I think that it's making it up as he goes. As current events starts to play out, it starts to mess with his psyche. So he's got everything under control, and then you got the Bay of Pigs with the Castro and John F. Kennedy Jr. and the nuclears, and then Kennedy gets assassinated. And I think that all these things start to either affirm that he's correct, in his belief system, and he starts to dig in, and he's changing, and he's evolving. His story and his religion and everything is evolving as current events play out, because the paranoia of the Cold War and of the Book of Revelation and the apocalypse and the end of the world, it's all in the back of his mind. And of course, he thinks he's the main character in the game, so he's changing it as he goes. So when he gets to Guyana, I don't think he really knew it was going to go that way. I just think that once the congressman got there, his paranoia was like, okay, if this guy gets back to America, they're never going to leave us alone. They're going to come here. They're going to shut us down. The UN's going to send blue helmets, whatever. They're never going to leave us alone. We got to do something radical right now. It's the end of the world, and I don't know if he was starting to lose it psychologically. I doubt he had a test done, but
yeah, I'm sure he did not.
It seemed like it was just on the fly, making it up as I go, and knowing in the back of his head that the world's coming to an end, and he's going to play the starring role in it,
Right.
That's what I see.
So I mean, I agree with all of that, and again, it's hard to tell. That's why you can watch all kinds of documentaries on this. And I was going to show a clip, I was just going to show a little bit of the Hulu special that they have out. I think it was by the History Channel. But before I did that, there's a little recording which I find, all of this is very sad, but it's also interesting. I mean, that's why we cover these things. After Congressman Ryan and I think it was NBC News left Jonestown, right? I think at that point, Jones, like you were saying, realized they're going to go back and tell people what's going on there. And actually, Jones was able to manufacture the people of the People's Temple to put on a show for them when they came, because they were coming regardless.
But it was the congregation slipping Ryan the notes, and then Ryan confronting Jones about the notes, and Jones making that speech. Well, if anybody wants to go, you can go with Ryan. I think that really set him off.
Yeah.
The slipping of the notes to the congressman is when I think he thought, I can't let this guy leave.
Right. Yeah, because then he was going to take them. I mean, it took 12, 15 people, back to the airstrip with them to essentially evacuate them back to the U.S. And yeah, you're right. Jones made that decision at that point of, okay, now's the time. Now all of the white knight training, everything's going to happen at this point, because Guyana's going to fall apart. If Congressman Ryan gets back, all of, the rest of the congregation, or half of it, they're all going to leave because they're going to be able to go willingly. And what ended up happening was the mass suicide, which really, I mean, it's now probably considered a mass murder event. I'm sure there are people that drank it willingly, but there were a lot of people that were forced and injected with cyanide or whatever other drugs they were using on these people to make sure nobody else was going to leave. I mean, there was, I think, 30. I forgot what the number was, but it might have been 100 or a little bit less that actually escaped. They just kind of went out into the bush and rode it out until it was done.
And there was also a few bodies that were shot. So some people made a run for it and were shot and killed by guards on the perimeters.
Right.
So it wasn't just everybody drinking Kool-Aid.
No.
There was people who were actually legitimately murdered, fleeing. They were shot to death, and then there were people who were injected with a syringe who didn't drink the Kool-Aid, who were just injected. Maybe I don't know how this went down. There's no cameras, but I would assume people are talking to each other saying, I'm not going to take it. And somebody probably comes up behind them and injects them, catches them off guard. I'm assuming that may be how that kind of went down.
Sure.
But there was not everybody willingly drank it. The majority did, but some were just straight up murdered at the end.
Right. And what's really sick about this is they started with the children, which I feel like was another, psychological manipulation tactic on the rest of the parents of, well, if we start on and poison the children first, what do the parents have to live for after that anyway?
Right.
It's really horrific things happened there. There was over 300 children that were killed. I think 450 some women, and then about 150 men or something like that was the numbers on it. But I'm going to play a little bit of this tape, which was I'm just going to play it and I'll kind of talk over it. But this tape in the background where really sick that Jones would record himself coming over the loudspeaker. I'm going to pause it real fast because I'll get distracted. Hear him coming over the loudspeaker at the pavilion, giving direction to people that, hey, it's time to go forward with this revolutionary suicide, as he calls it. And you can hear it. This is like a 44-minute audio recording, so we're obviously not going to listen to all of that, but you can hear just from what he's telling the people, there is resistance because there's people crying, and you can imagine the whole range of emotions that they're going through for this. But he ends up telling people like, why don't you stop whining, why don't you die with some dignity, like trying to quiet and hush people down to do it in some sort of, I don't know, ritualistic cultish way. And you can obviously tell there's resistance for it. So just play some of this.
And the violence, we'll take it by force. If we can't live in peace, then let's die in peace. We've been so betrayed. We have been so terribly betrayed.
So right, so he's telling the congregation at this point, right, what's going to happen to our way of living in our commune if Congressman Ryan goes back and he reveals this information for him. So he's trying to convince them, all the way up to the end, still of this thought of social living and commune living, which, I mean, cool idea with the utopia, but when you have this, you have this paranoid Messiah complex leader trying to have you practice doing, ritualistic suicides. I don't, right. But like you're saying, Bart, yeah, I agree. I'm sure there's plenty of people there at this point. They're like, what? This guy's going off the rails. It's time for me to get out of here. But you got to remember, you go back to who controls the passports. You're in this remote village, and not even, I mean, it just established something in the middle of the jungle. It takes about an hour to get to the airstrip, and then you have to fly into the airstrip from the capital of Georgetown anyway. I don't know how, if somebody tries to escape even without a passport, they're not going to make it very long in the jungle out there.
It's not a pleasant place to be. It's running through the jungle like that, but
no, not at all. So
I don't know if Jones moved to Guyana because it was just cheaper to do, or if this played a part in it. What are they going to do? Run through the jungle? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how far gone he was when he made up the idea that moved to Guyana. It's easy to tell that once he gets to Guyana, the dude is gone. But before he got there, halfway decent person, was wanting to feed the hungry, clothe the homeless, was an okay guy, I guess, but somewhere along that line, he starts to fall off the deep end. And I really believe it's just the politics that he was consuming, the global affairs around
Yeah.
him, the Cold War and the assassinations of political leaders and religious leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and just the constant studying of Revelation and the end of time and Jesus coming back. And I think that he thought he was going to have the starring role in it. And I don't, there was nothing to really bring him back, especially once you got him out to Guyana. Because, like I said, with Charlie Manson, once you got him out to Spawn Ranch, there is no mailman coming by to bring you back to reality, But once you got out to Guyana, there is no, kid on a red bicycle kicking over your trash can, that's going to bring you back to reality. You know what I mean? Like, he's stuck now in Guyana in this commune that he's built, and there's nothing that's going to bring it back. And in the 70s, there's no internet, there's no payphone in Jonestown. Everybody's just on the rumor mill, of what happened yesterday and who said what, and where did Jimmy get that orange shirt from? Like, that's all they got up to there. And so somewhere along the lines, he goes off the deep end. And I think it's just mass paranoia about the end of the world. I really do. I think it was an apocalyptic paranoia where he was just paranoid that the world was going to end, and that he was either going to play a role in it, or he might just do a revolutionary suicide and kick some big event off after his death, like post death.
Maybe.
I don't know,
It's hard to tell because I was trying to find and probably dig a little bit farther into it, because I was trying to find more of his, like sermon teachings or speeches or whatever you want to consider them at this point, to see what his actual, philosophy was for the congregation. But there's so much time that spanned in between him building this that it's hard to see
decades.
It's hard to see where it shifted, and because it is decades of it. It's slow progression of going to this route, but I think he had a lot of people convinced of this way of living, and a lot of people thinking of him as Father or God or Messiah. When Jones walks in, it's all different.
He had a semi-commune in California, just not a full-blown one. And I think that was maybe the idea. And then I think he got out there and he realized this is really difficult. But if we was to get on a plane and sell our stuff and move to a different country, I could make this happen. If we built it ourselves and we brought hammers and nails and saws and we built little houses, I think that in his mind, when he moved to California, I think he wanted a commune, and I don't think he could achieve it. And I think that he thought, well, this is a better way to achieve it.
Right. But I think really in the end, that day when the congressman came out, I think what triggered him to, go forward with the events that happened that day, was about him losing control, because he saw the writing on the wall and he knew what was going to happen, and he was going to be left, either possibly arrested, killed, or whatever, but he was going to lose control of this whole thing, and it wasn't going to.
Yeah, or he'd just be down to the last 22 people and himself,
Yeah,
and he didn't want it. He didn't want any outcome like that. He didn't want to be shut down, go to jail, get killed, lose control, or just be him and 17 people in Guyana. He didn't want any of that. All of that sounded horrible to him. Suicide sounded better.
So I'm going to play some of that. I mean, it's only 5 minutes. I don't know if I'll play the whole thing, but this is a great new documentary that's out by, what is it, National Geographic. It's on Hulu. It's called Cult Massacre, One Day in Jonestown. So this is kind of an extended trailer. I just wanted to play this for you.
Say, you'll die. before you leave here.
Fail to follow my advice, you'll be sorry. You'll be sorry.
Jim Jones demanded loyalty. He controlled everything.
Folks have really not done a good job of showing what was attractive about my father. I'm not here to protect his memory at all. But so what you see in the media about my father, one who didn't experience the temple, can't help but think, why would anybody follow that guy?
These people never had a chance. They had been victims of racism. They were victims of poverty. Jim Jones came along and offered them something. They trusted him and they believed him, but he was a crazy son of a bitch. And he was willing to see them all die.
This was a time in America where people were imagining what society could be. We had the Black Panthers movement. We also experienced the Hare Krishnas. But most interesting to me was Jim Jones and the People's Temple.
Dad was dynamic at times. In the middle of a service, he would, out of nowhere, jump off the stage, wrap an African-American woman up in his arms, and my heart would melt.
When I heard Jim Jones, he spoke about how much he respected the civil rights movement and how important it was that we continue to live out Dr. Martin Luther King's dream. So for me, it was excitement.
Now will each of you give a very fond embrace to your neighbor.
Reverend Jones, how do you account for such an avid following as you seem to have?
I'm principled and dedicated to my people.
Jim Jones became friends with these political people of the day that were being brought into the church to talk before us. People like Angela Davis, Harvey Milk, Visconti. And little did they know, after they left, Jim Jones twisted and represented what they said to show us how evil society was becoming. So we would need to go somewhere and build a place where everybody was equal.
Three and a half miles back into the bush, we will be in Jonestown. This is the road leading us to there.
No words could describe the peace, the beauty, the sense of accomplishment and responsibility and camaraderie that's here.
I thought of it as a community that was being built that had the opportunity to become something that actually might be equivalent to people.
But when Dad got there, it was a very different environment. For Dad, the temple didn't exist beyond him. The world didn't exist beyond him. It's the ultimate addiction, I think, adulation. One of the first things Dad did when he got to Jonestown was to take people's passports away from them. If you wanted to go back stateside, you had to ask his permission.
Do you want to go home? Oh. Well, then be seated and shut your mouth and don't be in my face anymore.
Jim Jones worked diligently to break apart the family unit. Everything you did was monitored.
They're out of my sight. I was trying to keep some humanity around here. Shut your ass down.
Dad became cruel, and we became numb to it.
He had us trapped. We had no way out of Jonestown.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's a free plug for Hulu and National Geographic there, but
Right. Hey, it looked like a good documentary, though. I mean, I'll give
it
them
is very good.
Yeah, it looked like a nice documentary.
It is very good. I mean, it's a newer one too. For a lot of you that are watching this, I'm sure you've seen it, most of
But I
this
mean,
documentary.
you heard it in their own words. You know, he was he had convinced these people that they needed to go and live in a commune. That society and American society and post civil rights America was a horrible place to live for them, and there was nowhere to go that they could be actually equal and free unless they move to the jungle and did it. You know,
Yeah,
so super sad.
yeah. So I mean, if you haven't seen that documentary already, I'd recommend that you go watch it after being here with us. Pastor's not here, so he's really the best at doing this because he's the pastor. But I just wanted to leave everybody here with, you know, the same sort of teaching with what we covered with Heaven's Gate and the Manson family as well. It's the spirit of discernment when you start to see leaders and things like this, and Bart you have a great way of giving the spirit of discernment of, hey, when somebody starts telling you that we're going to have these white knights and we're going to start practicing revolutionary suicide, and hey, let's give all my possessions up to you. I think there was even a point where Jones had all of the members of the congregation admit or say that they were homosexuals because he was trying to, again, control every aspect of their life. He was trying to break apart families and trying to break apart relationships within it, because ultimately what he was trying to do was control every aspect of these people's lives and to have them pledge allegiance to him and him only, because he got this power. He got money, you know, kind of in Scarface, you get the power, you get the money, right? And then that's ultimately what was his downfall. And unfortunately, I don't know what the true number is, but the 918 people that were, you know, essentially murdered here at Jonestown. So I think it's important to always be aware of what your gut feeling is as far as discernment comes when it comes with, you know, charismatic leaders and following different people either on television or YouTube or readings as well. People don't realize how much they're actually influenced by a book that you pick up and you read. So I'll leave everybody with that. And thanks for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on the Paul Begley Podcast. New episodes will be released every Tuesday on all major podcast streaming platforms. For a video recording of this episode, you can watch and subscribe on our YouTube channel at Paul Begley Podcast. Hey guys, we want you to connect with us. Follow us on X and Twitter at Paul Begley Pod. We'd love to hear your questions you want us to answer on the show. For additional Paul Begley content, go to our website at paulbegleyprophecy.org. If you've thought about it, we'll talk about it. Paul Begley Podcast.